Okay, let's focus now on the Premier League. We have one heck of a title race, lads. A few weeks ago, we didn't have that, but now we have one. It is fully on. Manchester City and Liverpool, they are pretty much neck and neck. Obviously, City have the 1 point advantage at the top of the Premier League table. But this is going to be wild, right? I mean, we're looking at the end of the season here. They meet at the Etihad on April 10th. Yeah. They then play each other in the FA Cup semi-final a week later. And then potentially they could meet in the Champions League final as well. So, Nick, but before we get into the X's and O's and break down who has a better run-in and who has the edge, this has got to be the best quality rivalry in world soccer that we've seen pretty much since Barca, Real Madrid about 8-9 years ago when Messi and Ronaldo were at their prime, right? This is right up there with that in terms of quality of the rivalry.
There's just no question. These are two teams, and the investment joke is 100% meant almost in sort of seriousness. They have put all their chips in. It has been one-upsmanship. I don't think Liverpool spends nearly as much money if they weren't keeping up with they're not Joneses. They're Man City. This is what they're keeping up with. I look at some of the purchases that Liverpool made, and we would hear Jurgen Klopp talk about, well, we don't have that money. We don't have that money. But he then went into his boss's office or got him on the line and said, we need that money if you want to compete. They have spent so much. Man United and Chelsea have too, so it proves system matters too. These are two teams that I think maybe because of the way it happened and that they're not traditional rivalries, we have probably underappreciated how good they've been in the Premier League.
And it's happened over a long, long period of time now. Where we think back to even when Klopp first came in, they were, upsetting Man City. There was great games in the Champions League and the latter stages of that tournament. So this isn't a recent thing, is it, Andy? And this has just kind of been building. There's been so much talk, like Nick said, behind the scenes, not even buying players, but battling for the recruitment guys or the analysts. And there's so much rivalry behind the scenes at these two clubs that are not separated by a long distance in England's northwest at all. So it just all adds into the mix and adds into the rivalry. And I just can't wait to get the popcorn out and grab a beer. And I mean, these games going week after week. They could have a Champions League final after these massive games. I mean, what's your personal opinion on this rivalry in terms of maybe where it sits in the Premier League? Because we've had some great rivalries over the years. Arsenal, Man United with Wenger and Ferguson, and obviously Chelsea, and Arsenal, and just so many great rivalries just all over the board. But I think this is right up there consistently as one of the very best.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between a competitive rivalry and either a local or kind of historic rivalry, something that's been going for a long time. And while we enjoy, the fierceness of Derby Day and everything, there is something to be said for two teams that just happen to be perhaps all-time great operating at the exact same time and going against one another. And some, fans of those teams might say, well, it's unfortunate that either us or them, maybe doesn't have the success during that period that they should because they went up against someone, that was their equal, that matched them in the quality. And so we are the winners from that. The people that get to watch these games week in and week out when they're not playing each other, but then you get the head-to-head matchup that is coming, the possibilities in the FA Cup and the UEFA Champions League that could also be done. Like, it's just, it's setting up to be maybe the best couple of months of I guess, Premier League and European and English football that has maybe ever existed, with these two teams being as good as they are. And I like the point that Nick made, kind of one-upping each other, the fact that each one of them at each stage has kind of, looked at the squad and said, okay, we've either got a weakness here or they've got a real strength here that we need to address. And maybe it's just for a couple of games, a season or whatever. But the one spot that hasn't been addressed between the two teams, and we talked about it in the preseason and we've talked about it throughout the season, is the center forward for Manchester City. And I think that's why we're here right now, to kind of put a bow on this before we get into like actually breaking it down, is that's why Man City had, 9 or 11 point lead just a few weeks ago. And they let it slip away with draws that should have been victories, with a defeat that should have been at least a draw against Tottenham as well. It's just they have dropped points in an uncharacteristic way because they can't put the ball in the back of the net. And I also think it's hurting them a little bit defensively as well. And so I kind of look at it, and I've been the most bullish of the three of us in kind of thinking that I think Liverpool might actually do it.
I think you're right. I think Luis Diaz coming in obviously gives them the advantage, right? The big January signing, it kind of might just push them over the edge. But let's focus on that now. Maybe where, Nick, does Man City have the edge over Liverpool? Is there an area where you'd say they're just going to, in these games that they're playing potentially, or just in the title race, where Man City, this is where I can make my argument that they are going to beat Liverpool and they're going to win the Premier League title. What kind of edge can they get?
I wish we knew if Trent Alexander-Arnold was going to be healthy and at anywhere near his best by then. That's been a real, the X factor of X factors. One of the points I want to make to piggyback on what both of you said is that what we're seeing from both of these teams also, because Pep and Klopp have been there for as long as they have, is players are given time to adjust, to build into the system. If you hire a coach and you're changing him all the time, and I'm pointing directly at Chelsea for this, and maybe Arsenal as well is seeing the benefit of this.
And Tottenham.
Yeah, Tottenham as well. Look, João Cancelo is fantastic. He was not great his first year. Everybody was wondering, well, what was that deal? Why did they bring him in here? But he has worked into the system. Kostas Tsimikas has now become an able replacement when they don't use Andy Robertson, and perhaps he may be a reason that they address that. Even Fabinho, who I think took to it very quickly, has now became a better player. So this is one of the reasons Liverpool maybe can point to next year, is Luis Diaz will be another one embedded. But the picture post, the point I want to make for this, two England players, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Phil Foden. They were brought along slowly. Whenever anybody pointed out well, in Liverpool's case, it was a deficiency, right? Like he can't defend. But Klopp let him work through it. He found a better role for him. Now we're seeing him and Cancelo cut inside more to take away what they do. And on the other side, there's Foden, who everybody kind of said was ready. He's ready. Why isn't he playing more? Well, now he's playing all the time, and he has been built for this. And that's the thing, and that's what Arsenal has to do. Maybe we will see Arsenal and Chelsea right in there, finally 4 ways down to the wire, because they're in a system, and we know what we're going to get, and they know what they're going to get.
So you think Phil Foden is that key that he may give?
Yeah, I think he's incredible.
The title race. Okay.
And John Stones has been fine. Ross Barkley became fine. But for every player like that England gave a label to about being, the whatever Messi or the whatever Iniesta, Foden's there. And full credit, I want to give a little credit to Lampard. I remember making jokes about Mason Mount, but he is now becoming as indispensable as well. So we are seeing good development from these clubs.
The Stockport Iniesta, there you go, could hold the key to the Premier League title race. Andy, can you make the argument for Liverpool where they might have the edge over Manchester City?
I think pace is the thing that either of these teams could have on their side. Liverpool obviously want to play at a much higher pace and tempo than Manchester City do. They want to possess the ball, obviously, and they want to look to defend and just strangle the game, strangle the life out of their opponents. Whereas Liverpool, a little bit more, not so risk averse. They're willing to take chances, get out in the open field, play that counterattacking game the way that Manchester City don't quite have the personnel to do. So I think, without trying to look too much specifically at just the one game, the one Premier League matchup that they've got still coming up down the road, that's a thing that I think when you watch Liverpool against Watford or Tottenham, or you watch City against, anybody else, the tempo of the game, the pace that the game's being played at, I think from 2 minutes in can tell you everything about how that game is going to go. And over the last month or so for City, it's been a little bit more chaotic than it has been. It's been teams giving a little bit more space to hit them on the counterattack because they've not been quite as sharp. And if you give an opportunity like that to Liverpool, it doesn't matter which 3 of the 5, brilliant world-class attacking options they have on the field at a given time, they're going to make you pay. And so I just look at that and I see, I don't know if momentum is the right word, if form is the right word, but I just think the moment that both of these teams are in right now, Liverpool clearly red hot at 7 or 8 games in a row, straight victories. Manchester City dropped all those points to cough up the lead. It just has a feel like Liverpool, are growing raising themselves to a height that they've not been at yet this season. Whereas with City, it kind of feels like they already peaked. Like maybe it was the first half of the season, and they're going to slowly. And maybe they have been slowly petering out as the season goes on. Because it's a small squad, by the way. And that's one thing. Yeah. It's a really small squad. And Pep has always operated like that. And you would think, well, the money that's available to him at Manchester City, of course, he's going to have every best player in the world. Yeah, he has that in the starting 11. There's only like 5, 6, maybe 7 players that he is, better than reluctant to go to off the bench. And I think over the course of 38 games, that wears on you. And that's not to say that Pep didn't have what he needed. I think that's a function of Pep being Pep.
You know what? The one thing about I agree with you on most of that with Liverpool. The one thing with them, with that counter-attacking style and focusing so much on it, is I've been at some of the recent games and they have left themselves exposed a little bit on the break. They have given up chances to, West Ham or Brighton in recent games. And where if you give those chances to some of Man City's attackers, they would usually take them. But then on the flip side, Man City's attackers have been not stone cold, but haven't been great either. And I think it's all about those combinations of Manchester City in attack. They still don't really know what 3 or 4 players to play. De Bruyne is going to start against Liverpool. Pretty sure Foden's going to start. And probably Mahrez. But then it's kind of, do you put Raheem Sterling in there to cause Liverpool some different problems? Do you play Jack Grealish, but is he too similar? Then you've got Bernardo Silva buzzing around. And it's just, they've got great combinations in all of those options. But I still don't think he's found the right one. And again, it comes down to, and I think this could be key, the January signing with Luis Diaz. I think he's given Liverpool a confidence that they can rotate players in and out and he can come in and do a job right away. Where I think if you're Man City, you're looking around and you maybe don't have that same confidence in some of their attacking players that are being rotated into the lineup. But what we do know is they're both great teams. Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp are both great managers. They're iconic. They're geniuses. But both are probably going to move on in the next few years. They've kind of hinted at that several times. Once this contract's up, they're going to move on. Nick, do you think this rivalry will still be as intense and as good if those two legendary managers move on? Because you would kind of feel that they'll just bring in 2 other great managers, but they've added to this rivalry as well, right? The respect that those two have and the style of play is so different that it just creates just beautiful chaos.
It does. I guess we don't know what the Gerrard versus Company era is going to look like, but jokes aside, I don't know. I can see Pep staying longer, especially if they land Haaland. Just because that is a next level of galaxy brain for a manager to have the ability. And if the one piece you're working into the equation is the best or slightly second best young center forward in the world, that's pretty good. Can it carry on? The reason I'll say no doesn't have a lot to do with Klopp and Pep. It has a lot to do with, I expect these other giants to get out of their own way. Arsenal seems to have learned a lesson. Tottenham, we'll learn this summer if they're willing to spend to Conte's wishes. But if they do, he's an incredible manager. He wins everywhere, absolutely everywhere. He just burns out. So that's why I expect Man United to figure it out at some point, right? Too much money, too much resources. Sometimes something's got to stick to the wall, right? Yeah. So I guess that's my argument against it, is just I can't see the amount of money that's there in the Premier League and the amount of people and players who want to play in it, not to have an outlier jump into the equation and stick around for a few years.
When we talk about the final months of the season and this particular game at the Etihad on April 10th, Andy, does it all come down to that? Or do we think that Man City have an easier run-in when you look at their games, or perhaps Liverpool have an easier run-in? It looks to me like City have a slightly easier run-in, but I'm not saying they can afford to obviously draw this game at home against Liverpool. But is it just down to this 190 minutes? Because it's going to be that close. We talked about it before a few years ago. 2018-19 season went down to the final game of the season, and then City pipped to Liverpool right at the very end. So is it going to be like that? Do you think it's going to come down to this game, or can you see City now maybe dropping more points and Liverpool really surging late in the season?
I think this international break has come at a really, really interesting and maybe even impactful time in the season, given the form that both of the teams were in. I think it gives Manchester City a little bit of time to rest and regroup and maybe refresh some ideas as well to go into the stretch run. And for Liverpool, maybe kills a little bit of that momentum that they have, and they have to come back and reconvene and find that form once again. That's never easy to do, especially when you take the 2 weeks off there in between. So I think that might be a little bit of an interesting thing. I don't think it matters who either of these teams has during the run-in, because if either of these teams are playing at a Premier League title winning level, it doesn't matter who they play, because they will beat anybody on any given day. And so it probably does come down to when they play head to head. I wish it was maybe a little bit even later into the season so that we could truly say, hey, this is the title match right here. But I think that the hype that's going to be surrounding that game, What if we see one of these teams going into that game and they just get completely overawed by the moment and what it's going to be, and and they just fumble it? Like, we could see something. We could either see the one of the greatest games of all time, one of the most hyped and anticipated games that has all of the potential in the world to deliver on the field in a way that we hope that it can. But we could also see something completely the opposite direction, and one of these teams capitulate. So I don't know. Bring on April 10th. I'm ready for it right now. We can skip the World Cup qualifiers. The stress that's going to cause me and you, Nick. We can just get past that. Let's get to this one right now. I'm ready.
I'm ready as well. It's going to be a great end to the season. I'm thinking about the time they met at Anfield earlier in the season. What a great game that was. And I think that was just a taster of what's to come. So I remember on Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com, we'll give you all the latest team news, how to watch this great game, how to watch all the other games as well, all the latest analysis and videos and much, much more up at PST. It's a busy time of the year. Champions League, World Cup qualifiers, Premier League, and of course, this incredible title battle between Man City and Liverpool. That is sitting absolutely center stage for us all to enjoy. So, gents, I've enjoyed this today, as always, catching up with you guys at Pro Soccer Talk. An absolute pleasure. Take care. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll speak to you all very soon indeed.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series, and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches, and much more.